Yeah, so without further ado, we're very happy to have Mr. John Casey back. Again, he was here 2 years ago, and he is going to touch in depth more on some difficult challenges expanding your career. How do you know the difference between making progress or just becoming complacent, things of that nature. So we're really happy to have him here, and I'll get right to it. So, Mr. John Casey, thank you.
Thank you. My name is John Casey. I run a company called Shamrock Consultants that today we focus specifically on leadership development and culture development for organizations. I spent over 20 years in the executive search side of the business and assessment side of the business. Very similar, we were talking about this earlier, I've looked at tens of thousands of resumes in the course of my career, helped a couple thousand different people from a career development standpoint. One number that we were very, very happy with was about 98.5%, I think it was 98.6% of the people that we worked with ended up being successful. In other words, spending more than 3 years, getting promoted at least twice in their careers. Thus, that's why companies hired us to come in and assess their own staffs. So, I'm a little less traditional, I think. Sorry. I was very impressed with the presentation, by the way. She really brought up some phenomenal points. Maybe brought up, I thought, just some terrific ideas, and a lot of it is simple, guys. And I was talking to somebody about this, Dan, actually, in the hallway. But if you're not doing it, the knowledge is worthless. And I love starting out a lot of the presentations that I do with this number. It was introduced to me earlier this year. It's the number 2,000. I know it's really faint, hard to see on that board. I thought it was going to be better, but we'll see. 2,047. Does anybody understand what that number means? Anybody ever seen that number before? Has anyone ever heard of Edwards Deming before? Edwards Deming is the foremost expert on statistics. I should say he was. He's dead. He trained a guy named Taguchi during the war effort back in 1947. Taguchi developed this thing called TPM, which became the Toyota Way. So if you've ever heard of the Toyota Way, or Lean, or Six Sigma, or any of those phrases, they all come from Edwards Deming. So he's just a brilliant guy. But the number 2047 is that most managers, most people in business come across 2,000 decisions a year. 47 of them at the end of the year add value. The point being, how do you know which are the 47? And his point being, you always need to be prepared. You always need to be thinking. So you always need to be focused on networking. You always need to be focused on your career. Because when you're not, that's when it slips. That's when you suddenly realize you're in a rut, right? Has anybody ever been in a rut before, career-wise, right? And it just happens suddenly one day, right? No, you let it go to that point because you need to be working on it all the time. And another basic philosophy that I have is the whole can do versus cannot do. I think we were briefly talking about this. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people in interviews or I've met for the first time who start out by telling me what they can't do. It's amazing. You know what the number? It's over 90% of the people in my career have started out their conversation telling me what they can't do. Well, I can't really do this, or I don't have a lot of experience with. Great, because now you just made a negative impression. Because now I think, okay, how can I not, right? How can I not say, well, okay, first the person comes up to you and says, hey, let me tell you what I can do. You go, well, that's being cocky. No, it's not. Because if you're not doing it, no one's doing it for you. Make a little bit of sense, everybody? So again, I'm a lot of basics. In front of you, you have a sheet, and one of the first things that I ask for is write down what you do, and then underneath that, write down why. Just take a minute and do it real quick. Nothing fancy, just a quick what you do and why. I'm sure it was very easy to do. Everyone's probably done already. One of the points that I thought was phenomenal, I was surprised you brought up, by the way, but was self-assessment. how often do you actually look at what you do for a living and why you do it? You know, my tagline, I think it was on the intro sheet that was sent out, is we change people's lives. That's what I do for a living. That's what, when people ask me, I say, I teach leadership, I change people's lives. And why would I not want to do that? It's a lot of fun. I love people. I love watching people get excited and develop, right? But the point being is, look at what you've written down, and are you proud of it? Anyone want to volunteer one of their whys? Dan?
Just the why?
Yeah, just the why part. Let's start there.
It's a to live - stay afloat.
You proud of that?
To the extent that I'm still alive, yeah. Not there yet, though. No.
All right, that might be missing the point of the exercise, but anybody else want to share one? Please.
Mine says it is necessary for businesses to progress.
Your existence?
My existence. It's necessary for learning, I guess that's what you said.
Okay. What you're thinking about? That's good. Anybody? Go ahead.
It fulfills me and teaches me about the world and myself in ways that nothing else does that I have found.
Okay. Elizabeth?
To support the mission of a cultural institution.
I'm sorry?
To support the mission of a cultural institution.
Okay. Do you think that's specific enough?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people are really proud of their answers. One?
Raise it high, raise it high.
That's
Come on,
okay.
come on, raise it high.
You can be proud of your answer. It's not a bad thing. There's no test here. But again, the point with that in general is, are you asking yourself that? And if you're not, I suggest you find somebody who can help you with that. Whether they're professional or even your friends, right? Just talk about what you're actually doing and why you're actually doing it. Because people don't do that. And I frequently, again, that's over 90%. In 27 years, talking to tens of thousands of people, when I ask them why they do what they do, they don't have a clue. Let's check. Great, is that something you want to tell your grandchildren about? Be proud about? Is it making sense? Because it's kind of segueing into my next point, right? Are you doing what you love? I am. So I guess I'm. But have I always? For 20 years, 20 plus years, yeah. And if I'm not, then I sit down and I say, I have to do something else. I have to chart a different course. I have to find a different course. I don't mean to be that direct, but I need to be that direct, right? Because you need to be thinking about this. Again, are you passionate about it? Do you love what you do? And if not, it's not, again, don't blame the rest of the world, right? What are you doing to expand your capabilities? Again, I teach leadership, and I think it's a lot of fun, and it's very important. And in fact, I don't think there's anything more important in any company out there. Period. Right? Anybody ever had a bad manager? Right? It's not the first time I've seen that, right? Who's had a great manager, right? Somebody who inspired him, right? Big difference. Big span. But here's a question again for you. You're like, oh man, you're always doing these asking questions. I'm the question guy. How often do you read something on what you do? Magazine, book? Again, who in the last week has read something on what they do, or read something that pertains directly to what they do? That can help. That's actually pretty high. That's very high. If you're not, again, everything's not going to apply to everybody, right? So if you're already doing that, you're going, well, but I saw half the room didn't put their hands up, right? You should be every week reading something. If anything, obviously because it expands your capabilities, right, and how you're building your capabilities. But second, going to Momika's point, it gives you something to talk about, right? If you noticed in the middle of her presentation there, she was talking about having a conversation with somebody about, a magazine article or Alabama or something that they can relate to, right? Again, I love talking about leadership, right? Or I love talking about developing people and doing career development, right? But how often have people read anything where they'll ask you a question about it? Not very often. Do I pay more attention to the people who do? Yes, absolutely. I'm a human being. Or the people who send me an email or send me a blip that they read. Right? We're going to talk a little bit about networking. Very smart people. I watch a lot of very, very smart networkers. because they'll send me an article about some leadership thing that they read in the past week, right? Or if you go to an interview, you know, if you read it, if the company was in a magazine, Time magazine or Business Week or something that you should be reading, right, on a regular basis, and you bring up the article, how often do you think that makes a difference when you go? Right? Right? 10 candidates? I'll tell you right now, the person who brings up the article, okay, I've been swayed by it myself. Right? I'm a professional interviewer, but of course I'm easily swayed. You know, so be read on your business, on your subject matter. Take it serious. Make sense a little bit to people? Okay? Just go through as I always compare my 12 points, right? Count if it was 12 or not. Won't feel too bad. But stop looking for what you used to do. And how often do people, you know, right, Dan? I mean, you're in management, right? So you manage hotels, so you probably have to go look for a hotel manager job. Why?
No.
But we think that way,
Yeah,
right?
no, absolutely.
You know, I'm an IT support specialist, so I'm looking for IT support specialist jobs. Again, that goes back to the question. I'm trying to build a little bit of why I asked you those questions in the beginning, right? Why? What do you really want to do? What do you really like about what you're doing? And again, the question I asked you earlier, right? What are you doing? Why do you like it? What do you like about what you're doing? Because again, a good interviewer, am I correct, Monica? A good interviewer is going to ask you that question. What do you like about what you do? Again, 90% of the time, the candidate stumbles. Which is kind of sad when you think about it. What do you like about what you do? What do you like, Jeff?
I like making a contribution. And
Okay.
yeah.
Have some answer. You know, again, the point about being quick on your feet. I love that point because you need to be quick on your feet. You need to have an answer. You need to think about this. But the best way to be quick on your feet is to think about it in the first place, correct? Does that make sense about not doing what you, right? Everybody says, well, Elizabeth and I were talking briefly, right? And she said, you know, I'm in non-for-profit management, right? Well, stop looking for that, right? Because you're just going to find it again, and again, and again. And then you're going to find yourself in that rut, and you're going to be bored. Is that helpful to people? Yes, no, maybe so? A little bit? Okay. The skills transfer part is something that, yeah, I did work. I think Rob disappeared. He doesn't like hearing me speak. Rob brought it up that I worked with Steve, who I think is on your board, right?
Yes.
And I was a little baffled because I asked him, I said, you know, what do you do well? You know, he's like, give me the typical, you know, I'm a good project manager. I'm like, okay, well, but what do you mean by project management? He really struggled for what he did. And when we talked about the whole JET program, I said, and again, you hit on a little bit of it. What do you think about your JET program transfers into skills in the real world? I love when people use that phrase, by the way, but it's real world. Anybody have any answers? She gave you a couple. Adaptability, yeah, absolutely. You pick yourself up here, you go over to another country. Where I'm going with this is, do you tell people that on a job interview? Because that's impressive. I mean, it's right in front of them, right? They should be able to figure that out. You're going to say, well, they're going to see the JET program. They're going to know, no, stop assuming, right? You guys are too young to remember the whole Tony Randall assuming thing, but that's okay. You make an ass out of you and me? That was his. Don't assume. Again, it's constantly assumed. I miss it. I mean, I'll look at a resume, right? I won't see that right away sometimes. Somebody who's in a foreign exchange program. Point it out that you're adaptable, right? What else besides adaptability? I wrote a bunch down.
Willingness to think outside the box.
Okay. Who said that?
What's that?
Who said? You said it?
Yeah.
I didn't know who said it. What do you mean by willingness to think outside the box? What does that mean?
It's, well, one, it's sort of connected to the adaptability. Going to a foreign country and getting a job is not something that everyone would think of. And once you're in that foreign country, particularly a country like Japan, which has no connection to, you know, has limited connection to sort of the cultural background that the United States have. You have to think outside of the box you've been living in your entire life in order to adapt to the country that you're living in now.
So what do they call that? Begins with a C.
What's that?
It's a big C word, right? Every company's looking for it, right?
Yeah. So I think it's very connected to the adaptability and our experiences of JET as well.
Ability to be creative, right?
Yeah, ability to be creative. Absolutely.
See if these work.
Hopefully the red maybe are.
Think better?
That might
It's a little brighter.
Yeah, that's not bad.
What was the first one again? Before creative? Adaptable. Flexible. I'm such a slow writer. And by the way, you're going to be able to quickly figure out why I'm a CEO. No penmanship. There's no way I could do most other jobs, right? I just couldn't. It's a problem with having people who do it for you. Patience was another one I came up with, right? You're going and trying to learn a different language, right? What's one of the first things people run out of in the business world? Patience, right? They react, they say something they don't mean, they do something they don't mean. So again, if you're a job hirer, right? Hiring authority, HA. Just, I love the acronyms. But again, I mean, if you're patient, right? I'm just going to write over this. Hopefully you guys can see this. If not, let me know. The reason I'm giving these to you again, I hope you're writing some of these down, right? Because they want to hear that. They need to hear that. Yes, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I think that the ability to get along with multiple types of personalities is important.
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking at different cultures, right? Understanding different cultures.
Cultural sensitivity.
Yeah, cultural sensitivity. Yeah.
I didn't do it on purpose, I'm sorry. I really didn't do it. Prank pen.
I was trying to spell sensitivity at the same time, but it's a little sensitive. Grating on my nerves. The ability to make connections, right? Being courageous, courage, right? Risk. I mean, that's a risk take, right? I'm trying to write faster, maybe that'll. What I missed? Great communicator, great listener. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, about communication. I don't know if it's an interview point, but it might be that from JET in the teaching, I'm at my work now. I find myself being able to teach peers a task, not just the task, but what they're doing, what the end result is, more than just click this, type this, like the whole reason behind it, and answer the task.
Oh, quiet. Throw those away. That's okay. Anybody else? Any other ones? Did I miss? I think I don't know if I put everyone up there that I said. Go ahead.
Public speaking.
Public speaking. Okay.
You're always standing up in front of people and teaching them, so there's kind of like a public speaking element to that, I suppose.
Okay. It's hard to do, right? I mean, if you can teach in front of 20 kids, right? No, I'm just always baffled when somebody says, "Well, I don't want to get in front of everybody and speak." I'm like, kidding? These people are going to sleep through what you're talking through. They're not going to throw stuff at you, right? I'm just saying. I mean, it's look at what you've done, which is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal experience. You have an edge over at least 90% of the people out there looking for opportunities. Does that make sense? But if you don't use the edge is useless. Does that make sense? Like, if you're not using these and more on every job interview that you go on, you're wasting your time, right? You've wasted your experience. You're not using your experience. I'm sorry, that's not smart. Because you have an edge. You have a major edge. And laugh if you want to, right? Because the next one I said, what do they want, right? One of the things that I get to do, and I love making fun of them, by the way, I get to talk to a lot of hiring authorities, a lot of presidents of companies, and vice presidents, and directors, and managers, right, of companies. What do you think they want? right? I wrote courage to take risks, one of the top ones on their list, right? Curious people. You know, give me some curious people. Give me some curiosity. Ask questions. Even if they shoot your question down, ask the questions. Trust me. There's a misconnect there between management and people in general that they still want you to ask the questions, even if they shoot them down. They need to learn how to handle it better. But anyway, communication, collaborators, bringing diverse groups together, right? I mean, we're globalizing at a speed of light right now. And the ability to bring different people together for a task. I mean, you brought that up even before, right? I mean, it's everywhere. It's in everything that you read. I don't know your name. Sorry, trying to.
Oh, Matt.
Matt. I know you're introduced. Sorry, thanks, Matt.
No problem.
I won't forget again now because you're embarrassed. But being able to bring diverse groups of people together, right? You do that. You teach. You've done that. Sell it. Again, if you're not selling it, people go on job interviews, and again, I mean, I think you definitely would agree, right? I mean, it's so boring to listen to people sometimes. Well, I managed the project for 14 months. I haven't for lunch today. Right? Yeah, I gotcha. No, listen, 14 months in Peru or something, right? Yeah. But you say, hey, man, you've got to snap them out of it. You've got to take command. You've got to be the one who says, hey, you know, I'm a great listener. Let me tell you how that's going to benefit. Make a connection, right? Don't just tell them you're a great listener, because they might not get it. Here's how that's going to benefit your organization. Listening's huge, right? People don't listen to each other enough. That's how you end up with conflict, right? And you end up with conflict management. People have to go to conflict management courses, right? They spend tens of millions of dollars on that. That's conflict. That's my perspective. You know, creativity, again, companies are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in this country as well as every other country in the world right now, right? Trying to be more creative. You have creativity. Bring it to the table. Give examples. Talk about things you've done. Make sure they understand how it relates. They're not going to do it on their own, right? I did do a little experiment, and I've asked probably 15 people. And I said, hey, I got these people from JET, you know, here's what JET is. What do you think their values in an organization would be? 15 pretty bad answers. So, I mean, I understand what you're going up against, right? So you have to explain it to them. You have to point it out to them. You have to bring these points right in their face and explain how that's going to benefit their organization. But again, going back to Mika's point, that means you need to do some research as well sometimes. Understand their organization, which I'll get into in a minute, right? And the other point about bringing, which I think is a great point, is just in general, the elevator speech point that you brought up, I thought that's fantastic. Because again, I said, I ask people what they do, and they tell me they're a project manager. I'm like, great. There's only 64 million of you. No. What do we talk about? Have a speech, have a presentation ready, right? How many people's attention do you think I get when I say I change people's lives? Oh, that's pretty bold, don't you think? Sure. But I do. Right? Again, have a presentation, have an elevator speech. You know, tell me what value you bring to the table. Be prepared for that. Right? So if you're going to go on, even if you're going on an interview, you're going to have to at some point make a point of what value you bring to the table. Don't assume that they do. Assumption is like one of the biggest things, by the way, in corporate America. Everything's assumed. We're going to get into that with networking. I mean, it's just because you make a connection with somebody, don't assume that you're friends. Meaning, you know, on LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere else. It's a misnomer. It's not true. Everybody write all these down? Anybody write any of them? Hopefully. So since this point's already been hit a little bit, right? Where are all the great jobs at? Are they all on the internet?
No, they're usually step or two away from someone.
Yep. Did a study with, I don't know what we got, like 600 people a few years ago. And it was, the internet was still pretty, you know, before jobs, was it jobs.com? you know, ladders and what's the other, Monster.com and all, and they bought jobs, or jobs bought them, or I don't know, but which are still out there, and are still what people, it's still one of the primary sources. And 4 years ago, 3 years ago, when we did this study, 99.9%, I think one person, in other words, out of the 600, found their job somewhere other than through a network. People who had found great jobs, you know, they found their career opportunity, they found a terrific management, they had gotten promoted, they just, you know, used some basic criteria. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining the criteria. In other words, people were really happy in their jobs, right? Really fulfilled in their jobs. They all found it through networking. Now, some of that was recruiters, you know, there was different forms of networking. Even the one person who was outside that field found it through somebody he knew and then submitted online, went through their online source. Which is a great point, because again, if you know somebody in a company versus not knowing somebody in a company, it's about 4 to 1, your odds, right off the bat. Just knowing somebody in the company, because it's familiarity. We did studies back in the 80s that were just the same thing that's out there today. The firm that I worked for did all these, we recorded people, and the second they found out you went to a school with them, right? The familiarity piece clicked in. And the person got the job like 9 out of 10 times, or it was even more than that, like 9.3 out of 10, you know, it was just amazing. I guess that'd be 93 or 100. But you have to network. And a statistic that really jumped out at me, and it's on your sheet there. Anybody but Dan know what this figure means? Because Dan told me this figure. Remember telling me this figure?
No. Yeah. Yes.
Hopefully you know what the figure is, but if you're not, that's fine. Play along.
I'm very sleep deprived in my job, so yes, I do. Yeah.
Anyone know what that figure is? Anyone want to guess what it is?
The number of people looking for jobs, the number of jobs available?
No, not it'd be way worse than that, actually. I must say that's good. All right.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to shorten this up. Really important figure. 53,000 and 23,000. 53,000, I believe, is the number of official JET alumni. 23,000 is the number of JET, I don't know, I put JET out of that, but
Yeah.
Volkswagen, JET, whatever. That's what acronyms get you. Well, I started writing JET alumni. But anyway, the number of alumni listed. I don't know where they're listed. I mean, Dan can certainly find out and share it with you. Why is that important? Why is that figure important? Based off of what I just told you about familiarity. Anybody want to guess?
They all should be listening.
They should all listen to you. They should all talk to you, right? Well, yeah, they should all be. They should be 53 and 53. I would agree with that. But these are all people who will talk to you, or at least listen to you at a rate of about 6 to 1 over anyone else. I think it's actually higher than 6 to 1, but 6 to 1 is pretty one of the safe estimates we have because they know you. How many other associations, you know, anybody go to school? Right? People who went to the same school with you, right? You run into somebody from high school, for crying out loud, right? It's a long time ago for me. More than a few years ago. Anyway, you know, I'll run into people and they'll talk to you right away, right? They won't talk to other people. The second they see you, yeah, I've seen them 20 years, 30 years. So use that. That's where I'm going with this, right? It's an extraordinarily valuable number for you to use. We're going to talk about how to use it. But again, if you have an association list, get the association list. Find out where they're at on LinkedIn. And reach out and say hello to them. Is it making sense a little bit? Again, if you don't use that, why? I wouldn't understand why you wouldn't. Those are people who will say hello to you. Not everybody, right? I have over 10,000. Once you get up to over 10,000, you really don't count. But I think it's around 14 or 15,000 people that I guesstimate that if I pick up the phone and call, the majority of them will call me back. That's a network. It makes your life a lot easier. When you want to get something done, you want something, you need something really bad, it's a network. And networks are really powerful things. I mean, this guy, again, the Deming guy, who Marshall Thurber, if you ever heard of him or not, but he's a lot more famous than I am. He put on this presentation, and he was talking about his wife needed, I think it was a life-saving kidney donation or something like that, like the last second, and he tried going through the normal channels, and they're like, good luck, there's this amount of supply and this amount of demand, kind of a thing. He put it on his network, right? Just started reaching out to people, and he had 8 donors that night. Think about that from a job standpoint now, right? That's the purpose of this, right? If you have a network that's really, really powerful, you're never really going to be without job opportunities. You have to develop that. There's no magic, there's no pixie dust. So, making sense to anybody in here? Kind of the point of what I've done in the beginning, right? I'm not going to teach you stuff that you quote unquote don't know already, but you're not doing it. So start developing that network right now. And it's just, that was an amazing figure when you told me that. It's way more than I thought, especially the second one. I'm like, wow, they're registered.
Yeah, I mean, of course that's spread throughout the world, but I mean, that's impressive, yeah.
Even better.
Yeah.
It means there are more companies, there are more networks that you need to be in. Going back to your point, right, about people who know people, you probably know someone in almost every company out there. They're former Jet, they went through something, the same thing with you. I think that's even better than college, personally, from an association standpoint. Because you went through the same things. You can associate with each other. You jump in contact with them. How many people have opportunities just flowing at them every day? You have 23,000 people who you can talk to. Does that make sense? I'm just starting to build up my LinkedIn thing. I'm still trying to figure out that whole thing. But yeah, and I can probably double it in a month, and I will, because we're going to start using it from an advertising standpoint, marketing standpoint. So some other basics that might not make sense is working together, trying to help others, focusing on helping others. You might say, well, wait a minute. So in the networking piece, I need to ask them how they can help me. No. The best way to network is to try and figure out how to help them. Make sense at all? I personally had a great example this week, and actually on the way here, which was ironic. The guy laughed when I told him where I was going, what I was doing. And this guy looked me up on LinkedIn because we had 5 similar connections. But I mean, again, I'm not an expert on LinkedIn. Maybe you are, you can answer more questions about it, but I was just amazed. He just, out of the blue, like, looked me up, right? And he used those people's names. He's like, I'll just say Susan Smith and Bob Jones. And I'm like, oh man, I know Susan Smith and Bob Jones. We ended up meeting, right? Had a meeting, talked about what each of us do. And the story gets I think it's even more into the whole network piece of it. I'm having dinner with this guy who's a vice president of this huge company, right, this past week. The only reason I had dinner with him, a lot. I really wanted to catch up with him, just, because we're good friends and we network well together. That's the best way to put it. I guess in the back of my mind, I was hoping to get some business out of him next year, kind of a thing, right? Nothing immediate. But in the course of the dinner, because I built a relationship with him, I said, hey, do you know Brian so-and-so? He left your company, now he's off running some other company. He goes, yeah. Picks up his phone, calls the guy right there at dinner. Leaves him a message, says, you need to talk to John Casey tomorrow. Wow. So I just kept asking. Right, while we're talking, I said, well, I'm kind of having some trouble with one of your other VPs in the company, and, go through this whole process, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'll call him tomorrow. He goes, in fact, he's my best friend in the whole company. I'm like, I didn't even know you guys knew each other that well. Because yeah, 10 years ago, in a particular part of the business, we worked together. Oh, okay. So, by the way, I was going to ask you about. He goes, I was going to ask you actually. He goes, I want to do a project. Can you do it in December? Which is traditionally a slow time for me. So I'm like, Yeah, absolutely. So, long story, right? So, how do I connect into two stories? In the course of it, he says, hey, you know, we're outsourcing a lot. So what do you think this other guy who I talked to on the way here today does? They do outsourcing, like logistics, basically. So we're looking to outsource a lot of our logistics. So have you ever heard of this company called Provident? He goes, no, I've never heard of it. I said, you will. Guy, you know, I'm going to have this guy give you a call. So that's what I was talking to this guy on the way here about was the guy who looked me up on LinkedIn randomly because I knew some people that he knew. Isn't that amazing? He's going to get business out of this. It's almost guaranteed, right? So, anybody connecting all that a little bit? It's a lot of fun when you start using it. And it makes your life, I mean, you just got to call on us, you know. Well, actually, I sent him an email last night, said, hey, can you talk on the weekend? You know, I'm sure he's probably like, but decided to do it. That making a little bit of sense for anybody? So, I mean, a point with that is where I'm going with the whole LinkedIn piece is, and I write it on there, is take 10 from LinkedIn, right? Most people think that means take a break from it. No, take 10 people tonight or tomorrow and reach out to them from LinkedIn that you know. Try and set up a coffee meeting with them. You have to meet these people. Again, if they're just a LinkedIn connection, I'm sorry, but you're a nobody to them. And you're somebody that you had a cup of coffee with, and try and find a way, right, that you can add some value to their life. So when you meet them for coffee, don't go there looking for something. Even if you're unemployed, go there trying to figure out how you can help them out. It's amazing, right? You're going there to figure out how to help them. By the way, the guy picked up dinner too. I didn't know if I mentioned that. That was my client. My client never picks up dinner. But they write that into, you know, we write that into our fees actually. But take 10 names and start there. One of the simplest exercises I give people. I've never seen anyone not have some success with that. Taking 10 names, starting, reaching out to them, trying to have coffee with them, meet up with them, have a phone call. You know, if they're in New York, don't fly to New York and have coffee with them. But have a phone call with them. Connect. And ask them about themselves. Ask questions. Right? I'm reiterating some points. But ask them questions about themselves. Don't start off telling them, hey, you know what, I just got laid off 2 weeks ago. Nobody wants to hear that. Right? I don't. If you pick up the phone and call me and start telling me that, I'm like, that's great. Think about what I'm going to have for lunch. Focus on it. Really, really focus on reaching out to 10 people and seeing what you can do for them. And it's baffling kind of a theory, but you're going to be amazed at the results. Because it's going to spread from there. Is that, do you want more information? I'm trying to keep this to an hour presentation. So, I don't even know where I'm at time-wise. Hopefully somebody's timing.
38 minutes.
38 minutes in?
And 16 seconds.
Who's keeping track?
Thanks, Tom.
No pressure. The thing about that I started to hit on a little bit though, you know, I said ask them questions. Everybody loves to be asked questions. That's the rule number one, right? The other thing to remember with it is to be remarkable. If you're going to network, try to be remarkable. Try to be memorable. And that doesn't mean wearing flashy clothes, being the most boisterous person in the room. And that's another misnomer. People think with networking, right, I have to be this really, you know, gregarious, outgoing person, right? I get that with leaders too. Anybody ever heard of Abe Lincoln? Dry as paint. He is. I mean, if you look at the guy, I mean, seriously, everything that's written on a guy, very intelligent. Would you like to sit down and have a conversation with Abe Lincoln? Anybody? I would. Love to pick his brain on a couple of things, right? He's a brilliant person just because he's not outgoing. So you don't have to focus on being remarkable. Think about what you're actually, you know, going to say. Think about what you're actually going to. That goes back to the articles, right? I'm trying to tie all this together for you. If you read an article about your industry and somebody starts talking to you, just bring up the article about the industry. Make a little bit of sense? Some basics that I think are, again, have to be said. Have business cards. I'm amazed, and people sometimes ask me, "This is a great question. I'm unemployed. I don't really have a card with your name on it. Today's day and age, I think you can. You can get these things for like $10, $15, right? Great investment. Have a business card with your name, and what is great about you? One sentence on your card. I very rarely see people. I tell people to do that all the time. I very rarely see people do that. Like, oh, I'm unemployed right now. Great, so I have no way of communicating with you, even if I want to. Does that make sense? Have cards, give them out. Give them out by the dozens. A basic one that I always, that's why I remind myself to remind you, arrive early. Especially if you're not outgoing. Clicks form in anybody ever been to any networking events? Just specifically networking events? I've been to like a couple hundred of them. People always give these little clicks to everybody that they know, right? Makes no sense to me, but I'm usually the crowd buster, right? But I'm a little outgoing. So if you get there early though, it's usually just one or two people standing around. See where I'm going with that? It's easy to talk to them. It's easy to start networking right away. And once you make that connection, because they probably, especially if you walk up to them and just say, hey, hi, they probably feel grateful to you, right? So when their friends do come, if they have any, right? But if they, I'm assuming they have friends, right? But when their friends come, they'll introduce you to them. Now you know 5 more people. Basics. Ask questions. Again, ask them questions about themselves. Make sense? It's a good idea to have your elevator speech, but don't usually necessarily always lead off with that. It's not a bad idea. I mean, you can, right? But again, even in interviews, I'm a big fan of asking the people questions until they don't let you anymore. Right? Where are you from? What do you do? What are you passionate about? What do you like? Especially the higher up in the chain they are, the more they want to tell you who they are. As obvious as that seems. Follow up. That's the number one mistake, by the way, that people make. Make a great connection, right? And then they don't follow up. Something as simple as following up. Just send an email, right? I see Shannon in the back, right? From 2 years ago, right? Shannon's on my LinkedIn, I believe, right? I think we're linked together.
Yeah.
Don't make me look bad. No, you never followed up. But I mean, again, Shannon, and I think you got a job offer out of our conversation, right? Just because she followed up. I'm not a magic person, but I mean, and I don't think everyone in here is going to get a job offer. If you could, it's like sending me an email tomorrow. Well, this guy's great. Let's invite him back again. No, it's just. But my point being is, it's just a simple follow-up. It's basic follow-up, right? It's sending the notes, right? I handwrite thank you notes all the time. I don't have anyone else do them for me. As bad as my penmanship. And people know they're from me, though. That's kind of the cool part about it. Because I get people go, did you have your kid send me a thank you? I've had that like 10 times. I'm like, no, why? And they're like, it doesn't look anything like the handwriting on all your other. I'm like, oops. That doesn't actually come from me. But a thank you notes always come from me. They don't recognize the handwriting. I'm not kidding. They don't recognize the handwriting because the rest of it comes from my assistant, right? So she writes really beautifully. I don't. But I make sure that they know it's from me. Simple little follow-up. I'm telling you right now, that gets you so far. And again, a simple point is ask for help. Right? Point of the story that I told earlier. Just ask the guy, hey, can you help me out? Can you put me in touch with this guy? I didn't expect him to pick up the phone at the table while he's eating dinner. We're in a Japanese restaurant, ironically. In a Japanese steakhouse. Right? He literally just picks up his phone while he's chewing and calls the guy. Like, wow. But because I asked. How often do we not ask? I don't want to bother him. Bother him. Trust me, it's worth it. Interviewing. I thought you did a phenomenal job. I guess I'll reiterate a few more things. The basics. Don't be late. Nothing worse, I can tell you, from having interviewed 1,000 people probably in person, right? And that's the biggest complaint I get from anyone. It's just, candidate was late. You almost never get hired when you're late. Anyone ever notice that? Anyone ever been late to an interview before? Good, don't be. It's just such an annoying thing because the interviewers, it just blows their mindset. Again, do research. I agree. It's so easy to do right now. You can Google everybody and anything. Kind of scaring Rob with that information earlier, but it's just so easy to do some research on people and have some information about them. Ask questions. People go, well, but I'm being interviewed. I'm just supposed to sit there, right? No. Ask, if you can, ask questions. And I put 3 of them in there that I frequently ask, and I have people ask, and they have tons of success with it. Every now and then you're going to get somebody who's going to cut you off and go, I'm sorry, I'm the interviewer. Do you mind if I go back to asking a couple questions I have for you? Sure. They're not going to not hire you because you were asking questions. But what is their biggest challenge? Especially, again, if they're any type of a decision maker in the company. You're going to catch them off guard. That's one thing I find people say, well, the interview kind of went like this. I said, but they answer your question, right? I said, again, I'm going to say probably 99 out of 100 times, the interviewer will answer your question. Well, it's a lot of chaos, and they're going to tell you some things that you want to know about the company and about the person that you might be working for, right? They're fascinating questions, but they're also going to give you an opportunity, right? They say their biggest challenge is, we're trying to come up with new ideas, or, we need somebody who can be patient with people and show them, how to do this particular task, right? Sound familiar at all? Because those are the traits, right? The talents that you have. You apply the talent back to what they tell you. You don't always have to make it real obvious, right? Don't answer if they say, we're doing this. Well, I got that. That people do that, and I'm like, it's a little obvious. We want to be a little more subtle with that. But ask them what their strategy is. Again, tells you a lot about the company, tells you a lot about what's going on in the organization. And the third one, and I love this. When I do these, I always have people go, do you really want to ask that third question? Sure. Ask them, why do you think I fit? Why did you bring me in? Again, you'll get, not always, you'll get the question answered at least half the time, though. Half the time. They'll tell you why they want, they're basically telling you what they want you to tell them. It's amazing. If you just ask. That amazes me, by the way. Making sense to everybody? It's a pretty profound point. Yes, you have a question?
I have a question about the second one. What is your strategy? But in regard to what? Like your strategy and... So
if they say, our biggest challenge is, turnover right now. Okay, well, what's your strategy towards addressing the turnover within the organization? And they might say, well, we don't have one. That's why we're talking to you. Or they'll give you some information, right? The 3, believe me, we've crafted these questions over probably 18, 19 years, changed them, switched them. If you can, always go on the offensive and ask questions. And don't be overly aggressive. You have to find kind of that happy medium, right? Again, I've had people go in and go, I sat down and said, okay, got 3 questions for you right now. What's your biggest challenge? What's your strategy? Whoa. Right? Because people take advice too literal sometimes. That's something. Why I present the way I present, because, okay, not like that. If that's what you told them to do, that's going to scare people. Okay. And again, biggest point there is follow up. I've heard this literally a couple hundred times, right? The person who follows up gets the job. I had a guy in Procter & Gamble, which is, if anybody ever not heard of Procter & Gamble, a huge consumer packaged goods company, right? He's interviewing internally for this really wanted job. And so he had hired me to basically help him from a coaching perspective. And he did much better than I think he would have otherwise. But it was brilliant because I told him, follow up, call the guy. He's like, oh, now we're supposed to wait to hear back from HR, blah, blah. Like I said, 39 other people in the company interviewed for the job, right? So he gets the job, big promotion, it's like a 40% pay increase, he's just really, really happy, right? And I said, well, ask your boss why you got the job. He goes, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm like, ask the question. So he goes and asks his boss, he says, just curious, at the end of the day, I mean, there was people who were better qualified than me for that job. He's like, probably shouldn't have said that, but just being honest, right? He said, well, why did you hire me? His boss said, you were the only one who called. He goes, and I just made the decision that day that, yeah, you were qualified enough. Not the biggest compliment to get from your boss, but I mean, but when you're considering people were better qualified for him for the same position simply because he picked up the phone and made the call. People are like, oh, I don't want to bother anybody. Yeah, calling someone 6 or 7 times a day, that's going to bother them. I've had people do that as well. And that's, by the way, it's called stalking. It's annoying. But no, I mean, but following up in general to me is not, that's very appropriate. Like, it's just not done. Yes?
In that same vein of follow-up, do you find that things go better if you send an email follow-up to say, hey, lost call? Should you send you said handwritten thank you notes? Do you find one makes a better impression than the other?
A year ago or today, right? So I'm finding today, ironically, especially with executives, and again, you might want to feel that question as well, right? But I'm finding with a lot of executives, they want the phone call. The email is lost, and I mean, I don't know, I get 300 a day, right? I mean, I think most people do get a lot of, just a ton of email. It gets lost. And it's more, again, everyone else is not calling. You want to do what everyone else is not doing in that case. And everyone else is sending the follow-up email. And sometimes because it's sent out, right, it goes into my junk box.
No one calls anymore. So if you make, like you
Yeah.
said, John, today, if you call somebody, it's like, oh, she called. So I think that's
So personal.
Yeah, so personal. Why not call? If she is not there, leave a message. Still check.
Mm-hmm.
You have a better chance of your voicemail being heard than your email being answered. That's just today's, especially at
Well, what differentiates us more?
Right.
Email or our voice? Right? I know almost all my friends when they call, or all my family members, right, by their voice. So again, you're adding that personal touch without even them even realizing that's why they're going to like you more. It's because they feel more personally attached to you now. An email does not personally attach you. I get a lot of those. You had a question here?
No, I was going to say, personal example, came back from Jet, a couple of years, 7 months unemployed, got to the point I said, I'm ready for Michigan, so I'm going back to Chicago, I'm going to stay there until I get a job, no matter what, Starbucks, I don't care what it is. But I got an interview through a friend at the hotel, and I was so desperate at the time for a job, but also wanted everything right. I made a point, I had three interviews in one day. The HR, the next person, and the system GM. I made a point to get business cards from the 2 levels beyond the HR person. And one person, she didn't even have hers, but I got another one. And I just wrote thank you cards, dropped them in the mail the next day. And I never asked if they got them, but I think that helped. And I didn't care because I was trying everything at that moment. But I mean, they were kind of shocked when I asked for business, because I wanted to play contact, you know? Like you want to have an address, want to have something to work on. So always, you never see that person again. And so I think even the call or something personal, it's funny, technology has gotten us so connected, yet so far removed from each other.
Right.
Right, so just a personal testimony for that. That's very important.
It's one of the biggest things companies are asking their employees to do. I mean, it's part of what I get brought in sometimes to do. They get so conditioned to sending the emails that they don't pick up the phone and call people when they have a conflict. But so I guess, again, applying it to the same point, it's a personal touch. Again, imagine if you get the person, they're going to talk to you a little bit more. Now again, everyone else is a resume on a screen to them, right? You're the person who they're talking to. Make sense?
When you do call though, make sure you know what you're gonna say. Because you don't get caught off guard. His voice, hi, then that's
Then you sound,
right.
then you just went
so
down the list. Yeah.
make sure you practice. There's nothing wrong with practicing your voice message, right? And you want to leave a really good impression. So just practice or just think about what you want to say to the person over the phone, because you have one chance on that. Email you write and delete whatever, but before you're sending it on the phone call, that's it. You have one chance. So make sure you know what you want to say. Make sure you leave your name. Someday, oh, did I say my name? That's the worst feeling, and that's not the work. So.
Other questions? Yeah. Go ahead, Dan.
Actually, sorry. So you touched upon, what was I going to say? Sorry. You touched upon not looking at the same field that you're already in. Like for example, hospitality, getting out of that. It's easy to get into that mindset of, well, this is the only thing I have, blah, blah, blah. Well, how do you, I have no qualms with starting over somewhere, like, really don't. Like, go put me at the bottom, whatever. But I mean, how do you break still that mindset? Because, you know, it's like, okay, I moved up a little bit, this is kind of just where I'm locked in. How do you just really just put that aside? Or like Elizabeth was like the medical topic for that. Like, how do you really just know where to look if you're gotta do something brand new like this? Like you are.
I mean, to me, again, you focus on your values, right? If you notice I teach leadership, I don't say I teach leadership at a particular level, right? I don't teach, because to me I teach leadership. So where I'm going with that is focusing on what that value proposition is that you're bringing to the table in the organization. Who needs that? But again, you have to do the self-assessment. You have to sit back and go, hey, what am I doing today? And why? So there's probably things about it you like, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope.
Yeah, no.
That would be really bad. But no, I think people get that rut sometimes. So I guess my point is going back to, am I answering your question? I don't know if I am, but focusing on the values that you actually bring to the table, and then looking for organizations that are looking for those values. And not everybody's going to fit that. Like Steve and I went through that, for example, because he's somebody that you know, right? And I mean, he struggled with that at first too. He's like, well, I'm working for, I'm trying to remember what kind of companies, I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. So we kind of focused in on, again, what his values are that he brings to the table. Do you want to answer any?
Well, I think that, again, going back to what do you really want, and at the end of the day, you spend more time at work than your spouse significant other, right? I think this sounds so cliche, but you have to be happy with what you do. I mean, trust me, I've been there, and I go to work just because I had to go to work. It's not good for you, and so you need to really. But first is self-reflection. You need to know what you want. Then I think you're gonna go from there. I don't know if that's even answering your question, but I get it. You already assistant manager or something that you already done, and then you have to go back and start again. It's hard, but you don't know what you want.
I love this, do what you love thing, but at the same time, I don't know how picky I should be in this kind of economy. Like, I feel like I should be grateful that I have a job now, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Again, that depends on where. So I think to the point, I mean, how happy you want to be. If you want to be unhappy in a bad economy, right? Or do you want to be happy in a bad economy, or a good economy, or any economy? And but I think that she brought a great point to this point. For this discussion is that you have to spend the time on it. This isn't a 10-minute conversation with yourself you have, which is what most of you do. You spend 10 minutes and you go, yeah, I'll just take the job with the 45 grand. Okay, that's as much time as you're willing to put into it. If that's as much self-reflection as you're willing to do with it, right? Then no, it's not going to work out for you. You're going to be unhappy. You're going to say, well, I'll just take the job, right? Well, then shame on you. I mean, don't tell anybody you're unhappy then, because that's your problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't mean to be so blunt back it with you, but
No, I totally got it.
I mean, you have to spend the time with it. And if you're struggling with it, then you need to spend more time or get some professional help. Somebody to help you out. That came out wrong. Next question.
Connected with those. So some of the things that help me assessments, just kind of reflecting on what my strengths are. Like you're using the word value. I think I might use the word strength to say like, what am I really good at? What am I really doing? How do I contribute? And that has kind of helped move me forward instead of, looking at like what's my target position. And Dan and I work together, so we talk about that. But
Mike simply goes up.
he's fantastic. But my question, similar to Dan's question, is when you worked in a field for a while and you put a lot of effort into it, not just those skills and those strengths, but also your network. When you want to start looking outside of that network, other than, and maybe I'm answering the wrong question, but other than spending time in your personal time doing things that you enjoy, good at, what are some other ways to grow your network so you can explore other industries?
Do you work full-time in JET, or do you?
What's that?
You work full-time for Jet, or do you?
Oh, no, I work for.
So you volunteer.
Thanks.
But you volunteer in Jet.
Oh, yes.
So what do you like about what you do when you volunteer to do?
So I'm new to the Jet Alumni Association. Thank you. But really, I mean, in a less formal atmosphere, I really like. I play volleyball with these folks, and you know.
I dragged her into participation.
You did. And I applaud her greatly for that. So getting involved and honestly teamwork, a lot of those things that I like, I'm now kind of incorporating into my job search. And I'm grateful to have my job. And I also, I don't know the person who's in the front, but what you say, like, do you continue looking and how do you feel if you're like, but I have a job, I have friends who are unemployed. The fact that you're not like catapulting to get out of bed every morning to go to your job, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're grateful, not grateful.
Sure.
But, I mean, to work, it's all a process.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still go to work and keep working. I'm answering other people's questions.
But no, I mean, if you want to expand a little bit, I think on that is, but is that enough for you then?
Right. Which is
if
why
it is, then I'm not going to tell you to change that. Why would I tell you to change that?
Oh.
And you're not going to do a very good job of changing, right? If that's enough for you, then stay there.
Indeed. On a personal level, I am definitely, on a personal, professional level, that I'm searching the world, because I know that I can contribute more fully in a way to benefit who I'm working for, as well as myself. So, but I also know I need to get around to do these other things, so I'm not going to quit my job just so I can
No, I would never recommend that. Again, that's taking the message.
Correct.
Well, no, I get people who say that sometimes, who say, you know, I got so motivated, I went back to my job and quit, and I'm like, that's really good. But it was because of you, and you're, no, don't blame me. Gotta call my lawyer. No! But it's just, it's looking at it from what do you really want to do, right? But again, I'm telling you right now, that's where I started out at, right? That's why I left it up on the wall. Think about what you can do.
There's a good quote about that, and I don't know.
Somebody stole my quote?
It essentially it's the same idea, which is focus on what you can do, don't get stuck.
Yeah, that's my quote. Somebody knows. It's just that, but again, the problem is what people do and what they say, and right? What I frequently hear is what people can't do. I can't change jobs. I can't find, because of the economy, I can't find a good job right now. Don't blame the economy. Look at your own process. Do something different in your process. Don't keep doing the same process over and over again. Because that's the definition of stupidity, right? Or insanity, or whatever it is. I think it's Einstein's definition of insanity. Do the same thing over and over again, expect different results. But that's what I heard constantly. People are like, I'm working really hard. You're going to keep working really hard.
In that working really hard, and to develop the one, and my actual question is sorry, which I realize I should stop it. But is how to develop when you are looking to move outside of the field that you're in, how to develop those networks that are not necessarily industry based. Do you have advice for how to kind of tap into exploring other industries?
Can I say something about
Please.
that? Career fairs.
Okay.
I actually have jumped from retail to insurance.
Oh.
So, and that was all because of networking at a career fair. Like, I got hired by a retail company, but I made a contact at an insurance company, and I went to that insurance company after working a year at that retail company. And I was like, no, I'm not going to work Saturdays and Sundays anymore. And then I went to this insurance company, and like, I applied online, I sent an email, and I got called 3 days later.
Wow.
Because I had made a connection with that person already a year before. So, I mean, sometimes it's just experiencing and, like, just jumping into it, like, you know, like, I don't want to work on weekends. That's the way I looked at it. So I'm just going to get into insurance. And because of my skills and my background, they looked at all that, too, and they were like, well, okay, you know, it's...
If you want to move to a new area, right? What do you just go to the area and move into a house? You research the area, you look around, you see what you like, what you don't like, right? You probably have some criteria that you've established before, right? If you're older, you like schools. If you're younger, you're looking for, you know, bars or things to do or restaurants, right? So you establish criteria of what you're looking for. You focus on what you like, right?
Yes.
So if you like to play volleyball, you might look and see if there's a good volleyball. You know, maybe they have outdoor volleyball, right? A couple miles from my house, which I think is just phenomenal. Like where I live, I'm like, wow. They have these like 8 volleyball. So, and honestly played into a little bit of the selection of the area, because I'm thinking, that's the kind of place I want to go and have a beer in the summertime, right? So the point being, same thing with the jobs, is you see things that you probably, when you went to the job fair, you probably saw things that you liked and you thought were interesting.
Well, the retail company was very attractive to me. And then the insurance, I had never even thought of insurance, but I made a great connection with the recruiters there. But the retail company seemed more fun. Except working there after a year, I was like, I kind of want my weekends back, you know?
Yeah, insurance doesn't have weekends.
And they're Monday through Friday. And then, well, because of my I actually have a degree in accounting, but then I found that kind of like,
well, insurance is a very statistics-based
industry. Exactly. Yeah. So then I kind of fell back on that, and then they saw that, and it's just like, well, I guess with the retail, I had worked in retail the whole time I was in college, so they hired me as a manager as far as that, you know, so then they looked at that aspect of it. So I think it's just also, sometimes you gotta take a risk, you know, like I jumped back into retail knowing, you know, I have my accounting skills, and I did, after a year, I was like, no, this is not for me, and I jumped into it, and yeah, it's a different, it's very different, but I like insurance.
We'll take one last question with Jesse, and then we'll wrap up and then go into the wine and cheese, because we got a lot of thirsty people here. Go ahead.
I have a history for working for very small companies, so there's not a lot of opportunities for promotions or leadership roles where I'm working with other people under me or in a management position. But I'd like to transition into a career where I can be a leader. But since I don't have that experience on my resume, how would I interview or apply for jobs that require leadership experience, even if I don't technically have any? Because, like you said, I don't want to lie on my resume.
I'm sorry, you're a jet? You were a jet?
Yes.
Then you have leadership already.
I was a leader of a classroom full of children, not my colleagues.
That is actually harder than leading people. I just had somebody bring that up recently. That, you know, just talking about getting adults to understand leadership versus, and I think you brought up teaching. You know, it's something that's more about, you have to understand how to, and again, it doesn't happen in 10 minutes. So you're not going to understand this in 10 seconds. But you have to sit down and try and figure out what you've done that's displayed yourself as a leader, number one, right? Number two, again, if you're just going in cold to the organizations, you're right, you're not going to have as good of a chance. You're just not. Because they're going to, especially if you can't put buzzwords, right? That what do you call them in the computer thing?
The keywords?
With that little key thing that you said. Anyway, that finds the words, right? They call them phishing devices, right? They're called phishing, PH or whatever it is, phishing. Right, where they go through and they look for keywords. So you're not going to be, so you definitely need to network. Does that make sense? So you really have to focus on your network.
Also, it's like, you're a jet, so alumni, so you don't have leadership skill, but if you still feel that you need to do something, go volunteer. And there are a lot of like officer position and volunteer organization. Become an officer in one of the any boys and girls club, whatever, and you can put that in a resume. So if you feel like I haven't had that, then go look around for something that's not work related or not really paying your job, but go volunteer. You have plenty of that. They're looking for someone like you ask your skill to be officer in a certain organization and volunteer with yourself, and you can write that on resume. So that's another way to build up your experience and you can apply.
Or improve your experience.
Right. Absolutely.
Chicago Cares is sorry, I know you're. Chicago Cares is an organization in Chicago that paints schools. I run the projects, and we always have what we call PSMs. I don't remember what they stand for, Project Site Manager or something like that. Sorry? But it's a leadership position where you have 20 or 30 people each, right? So I'll have like 6 to 10 of these people, right? And then you can go and become the project site manager. And absolutely, if I were running a company, if I do run a company, but if I were running a huge company, right? Am I going to look at that? Absolutely, yeah. As leadership experience, absolutely. Especially if you can turn around and explain, right, how it makes sense. So that goes back to taking the values and transferring the values. I'm not going to tell you that transferring skills is an easy task. You have to sit down and think about it, though. I mean, it's very easy for Monica and I, right? Because that's what we do for a living, right? The second you were talking about the insurance company, I'm thinking, okay, it's financial analysis. You said you're in accounting. That makes sense. Right, but that's because that's what I do for a living. Right? So I don't expect you to transfer that as fast. You're gonna have to spend time on it.
Right.
Or get someone to help you with it, also known as getting professional help. Make sense?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Anybody? I think you wanted to go.
Yeah, also, I mean, I just want to say thank you very much to both you guys for